So, like I promised, I'm about to tell you all about prison abolition. So, what it is essentially is it's a movement to get rid of prisons. It's been around since about the 60s, and there's still kind of movements going on around it. A lot actually kind of intersect with the idea. So, historically, there was the Black Panther movement. It was kind of like a liberation movement. And even now, kind of like Black Lives Matter, they kind of touch upon the idea that there's social factors that are currently impacting the way that our justice system works, and essentially the abolition of prison essentially kind of works around that as well, and it kind of says like we need to examine the factors that are happening before people are going into jail. Who are we targeting, which is ethnic minorities and lower class individuals, and how can we fix that problem? So that brings us, I guess, to the second question, which is what is the ideology of this absurd idea? Well, the ideology is that prisons are essentially, in America, are essentially run by the government, but also some are privatized as well. And the ideology is essentially that corporate America and the American government is continuing slavery and capitalism by incarcerating individuals, and it is just shown by the increasing amount of numbers. So if you look at historically how many people used to be incarcerated, now you hear a lot about how there's increasing numbers, we're building new prisons because we just don't have the facilities for all these inmates and things like that. And so it's essentially talking about, well, why is this happening? Who's gaining from this? And essentially, it's capitalist system. It's the corporations and it's the government. So some of the arguments, there's quite a few, but some, just to give you a brief overview of the arguments for this movement, are that for-profit organizations will kind of make a deal with the government, and they actually profit from the growing amount of inmates in prisons. And essentially, as I discussed before, the growing inmates are typically people from lower class ethnic minorities. So, very interesting enough, for-profit prison companies have actually drafted the legislation for prisons in America. And they did this to maximize their capital gain. So that's quite interesting that they had a say in the drafting of the legislation with the American government. It's kind of odd, anyway, we won't get into that. So, Tom Beasley is actually the co-founder of the Corrections Corporation of America, and encouraged the government that for-profit organizations could take on the responsibility of helping out with prisons and inmates so that nonprofits can get additional money and help out and get their capital gains, and the government has one less worry to worry about. So you're probably wondering, as I was wondering, how are you profiting from people being in jail? Like, isn't that taxpayers paying for that? Like, don't I pay for that as a taxpayer? No. Well, some you do. But for the majority of it, especially for-profit prisons, think about the independent distributors. So you're giving jobs. You have independent contractors that are bringing in the food. You are giving jobs to people that are supplying the uniforms. You are giving jobs to correction officers. So in that sense, obviously people are going to be like, yeah, like let's keep this momentum going. Let's keep people in jail because that means that I'm going to sell this much food. I'm going to sell this many uniforms. I'm getting a bunch of hours as a correctional officer, etc., etc. There's also handing out infractions to inmates. So essentially what this is if an inmate does something that is not agreeable to, for example, if you spit on another inmate, or if you do something that's wrong, you're going to get what's called an infraction. And what that is it's essentially someone giving you a ticket, and it's your punishment, and it can usually add time onto your sentence. So let's say, for example, you're in jail for 2 months and you spit on someone or you punch someone. That fraction actually will add time to your sentence, and however many fractions you get, the more time goes on. This is keeping people in jail longer, meaning for-profit prison companies are banking off of you staying in there longer. Interestingly enough, there's actually a clause in that legislation that I was talking about stating that for-profits will receive a minimum amount of money each year, and if there are no inmates to get that quota met, then the government is essentially responsible for making sure that that gap is paid to the for-profit prisons. So let's say they're out $2,000, or usually it's millions, billions, but let's say it's out $2,000 for meeting that minimum. The government has to pay that to the for-profit organization. So it's just some of the many proposals of this movement to abolish prisons, and like solutions to that and other options are demanding that education be given to lower class individuals, neighborhoods, and communities, better resources, so healthcare, education, jobs, and food security in these neighborhoods, educating people in the jail system, so prevention versus punishment, and educating them on this is what jail is like, this is what you're signing up for if you do these crimes. Addressing the social issues essentially will reduce these crimes. Replacing with more effective and humane systems. Prison condition reforms. Community-controlled councils to manage crime rather than the government. And it's essentially saying that in addition to all of these things, what can happen is people are going into the system of jail, prison, and some have mental health illnesses, some people have addiction issues, and some people come from low-income families. They have families that have taught them these things, and they know nothing else. They're going into the system with lack of resources. In prison, there's lack of resources. They're not getting the help they need. They're coming out, and they're still not getting the help that they need because nothing's being addressed. And what has happening is not even just the inmate is suffering from this, society is suffering from this. And it's creating reoffenders. And it's not healthy. It's not helping anything. So essentially what this movement is telling us is that we need to create a different approach, something that's not in the eyes and the benefit of our government and corporate capitalism. And we need to create an approach that's going to help individuals and help society, because people are being oppressed with the current system, and we're setting ourselves up for failure, and it's preventing future generations from having a life worth living and having a life where they are given the opportunities that everyone else is given. So just some food for thought, and I hope that you enjoyed my video. Bye!